I know.
I didn't really know you had the recording guys said to use this. It's fine.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. So my name is Anne van Kesteren. I work from the Netherlands for a Norwegian software company called Opera Software. Opera Software is we make web browsers. You might, I guess you might be familiar with us, or otherwise you might be familiar with Firefox or Internet Explorer, who we try to compete with. We make a browser that we try to run on also lots of small little devices like phones, the Wii, the upcoming Nintendo DSi. We have various other interesting, cool projects that I probably can't talk about. I'll be talking about our web standards effort called HTML5, and if we have some time left, I might do some CSS free demos. I was actually asked to also give some more information about Opera Software. We have about 650 employees, and we are global. Most of the development happens in Europe, in Norway, Sweden, and Czechia, but there's also global offices in Japan, in Tokyo. We have one in China. We have 2 offices in the US. Well, I'll just start with HTML5 because that's what I'm way better at. HTML5 is the next version of HTML, and we try to do things a little bit better. To give a small example before delving into the other things, here's a thing how we can do date controls in the next version. Instead of having to script your own using JavaScript and various input fields, it's now just a simple new input type called date. And there's also, if you want to have both a date and a time, there's one called date time and so forth. It does not fit on the screen because I enlarged the font size and things, but it's quite easy. Like you go to and to select April 1, you do like this. And the nice thing about this is that every user agent can implement their own UI for this. So if, for instance, you use a screen reader, you don't necessarily need to, you can still use this control even though your user, because you might not use a mouse, and the date control that some people might write only accepts mouse input and such. So this is much more accessible. Well, let's go through some of the history, why we started with HTML5. Usually these things come, the W3C, the way the W3C works is that they host workshops and various parties come together, submit position papers, and out of such workshops come various work items, and then they start working groups. And in these working groups, various people from different organizations, universities, come together and try to work on a new standard. So they hosted one of these workshops in 2004 on the future of web applications. And so companies came there, browser vendors, Google, Microsoft, IBM, etc., and they all put forward what they think web applications should be like on the web. And the outcome of that workshop was that XML would be the future. We would start doing Xforms, XHTML2, SVG, and all these things, and it would be great. So I'm really biased here because I work for the people that revolted. So you may want to check facts and things afterwards by searching. Anyway, our position paper had something different. We didn't want to go with the XML thing. We wanted to do evolve HTML, and we did that together with Mozilla and Apple. We put forward a paper that we wanted to remain backwards compatible with HTML and build extensions on top of that, build extensions on top of the current DOM model, because we thought that replacing the entire internet infrastructure, and about 98% of the documents you see on the web is HTML, the rest is PDF and Word. Replacing that entire infrastructure with all the CMS systems that output HTML with something new for marginal benefit, because the new features that Xforms and XHTML2 provide are not really that compelling to be that you would have to replace everything with an XML toolchain to make sure that it always is well formed, etc. And we actually found out that it was possible to add little extensions on top of HTML while remaining backwards compatible with the entire installed base, which means that instead of replacing your entire CMS, you just had to add a little new output function to your CMS to output input type date instead of custom date control. So that's part of the reason why we did this. Mostly the large legacy installed base, and also that we wanted to preserve all the existing content that was out there. So since the W3C wasn't interested in doing this, they started doing their XML stuff and started various groups on that. we did stay with the W3C for other things, but we started the WHATWG. And the WHATWG is a separate effort, and we set it up as an open mailing list where everyone in the world could subscribe, send their ideas and things. And currently, today, there's over 900 people on the mailing list. It might be 1,000 now. I don't really know. And all these people contribute ideas. Some people only contribute to the things they're specifically interested in, such as video or 2D graphics APIs. And other people contribute to every thread, and because they like to do that. To collaborate, we set up things like a wiki where people can add entries to the fag, update things, discuss ideas on how to do certain things, how to do graphics in HTML, and etc. There's a blog which is mainly updated by Mark Pilgrim from Google nowadays, and he writes summaries of our of discussions, changes to the specification. The specification itself is also in a Subversion repository, so people can check in the diffs the editor makes to it. And people can actually fork the specification as well if they think we're doing the wrong thing. So it's basically done as sort of an open source project. We have forums for people that don't like mailing lists. Most activity happens on the mailing list, but some people didn't like mailing lists. They thought it was some ancient thing. And we also use RSC, which they classify as the same. So we set up forums so people can contribute there, and then we can put it back to the mailing list. W3C hasn't been exactly sitting still meanwhile, so this happened like in the time frame 2004, 2006. And at the end of 2006, Tim Berners-Lee had a change of heart, and he wrote in a blog post, he has a personal blog somewhere, and he wrote, "The attempt to get the world to switch to XML, including quotes around attribute values and slashes in empty text and namespaces all at once, didn't work." And with that, he basically announced that the W3C was interested in working on HTML again. And in March 2007, they announced that they would renew the HTML working group, and the old HTML working group that was just working on XHTML2 would be renamed to the XHTML2 working group. And so they started up a new HTML working group, and that was quite nice actually, because it also enabled Microsoft to participate, which for various reasons didn't want to participate in the WHATWG. And it is valuable to get their input. So now we sort of have this situation where you have the w3.org and the WHATWG both work on HTML5. They're sort of separate communities with a bunch of overlap. They both publish the specification. The differences between those specifications is that they're identical apart from the style sheets. So the W3C publishes a blue version and the WHATWG publishes a green version. And the reason they're still separate is that we sort of keep the WHATWG going as well, as it seems good, and it has a different license which allows people to fork things and stuff. So to get back to some of the goals, one has been increasing interoperability. There have been a ton of features that have been entirely undocumented, and to get actually market share, user agents have to reverse engineer these features from each other, and they do it in slightly incompatible ways. So having actually a definitive specification for those features that you need to support as a user agent in order to be able to render the web is a good thing. So one of those features is the content editable attribute, which allows editing in an HTML document. This specification is actually an HTML document and then presented using Opera. We have some kind of, we allow, in CSS there is a presentation media type, and you can basically set styles for presentation mode. And we happen to support that. So the content attribute can be applied to any element, and it makes it editable, and you can basically rich text editing. And the thing is, all browsers support this feature, and for quite a while, but they all do it in slightly incompatible ways. The exact details of the attribute value, like can it be set to true? Is it still editable if you set it to 1? We're not defined anywhere, and browsers were not interoperable, so we defined it. And our browser user agents are converging. We did a similar thing for parsing HTML. As you might know, there's this thing called tag soup. And it basically is that you can write HTML in a lot of different ways. And whatever way you do it, the browser will make something out of it anyway. In fact, for any given byte stream, there is an HTML document. And this was not defined. So the HTML document you would end up with could differ quite a bit between the various browsers. Some browsers started cloning elements once you hit like misnesting. Internet Explorer will create a graph instead of a tree, which gets very interesting results. Like your next sibling would also be the parent. In Opera, we sort of kept an annotated tree, and then in the layout engine, we did various things to render things properly. So one big effort of HTML5 was to actually figure out how browsers go from a byte stream to an HTML document, and what would be the best way to get around it while remaining compatible with how the DOM works, which operates on a tree, and CSS, which also operates on a tree. So we sort of had to get a tree model out of it, while still remaining compatible with the documents out there. So we sort of converged on a model now, which can be implemented independently by other parsing libraries. So for people write a lot of libraries to parse HTML content and such, for instance, in Python to get certain data out of documents, and they can now do it in a way that is compatible with browsers, so they will see the same thing that normal end users will see, which is useful. So this was one of the major things, and we're not quite there yet. Like user agents are patching their parsers to become more compatible, but it will take a long time. So basically we're enabling more competition as well by defining all these pieces, by defining how the DOM works, by defining how HTML works and how it needs to be implemented to actually render HTML content. It makes it a lot easier to deploy new browser software. It's still quite hard, of course, because you need to care about performance, footprint, etc. But the basic thing, like reverse engineering, basically costs us like 50% or so of the QA time, like figuring out how Internet Explorer or Firefox does a certain thing. And now with standardizing these things, it makes it a lot easier to do these things. So while we were working on HTML, another interesting thing is, of course, to extend it, to add new features and make things easier for people and make it more usable. So here's a list of all the elements in HTML5 that are conforming. So font you won't see there. User agents will still have to support font, but we will not allow you to use it, for now anyway. The highlighted ones are all the new elements. And I will go through some of these in the presentation, and the rest you can probably look up online. Another thing that we want is to address the needs of web applications. Since the invention of JavaScript, HTML basically has been sort of abused as an application language to create things like Gmail, Twitter, Flickr, etc. So it sort of makes sense to add some kind of capabilities to HTML to make these applications easier to write and sort of make it more integrated. We also want better structures for documents. So we did a huge search on web documents. Ian Hickson from Google scanned about 1 billion documents, and he still does it now on larger data sets, I think like 6 billion or so. Documents, and basically scans all these documents and sees what kind of class names people are using, what kind of IDs are people using, how do they write HTML markup, which attributes do they commonly misspell. For instance, the language attribute on script, which is now completely gone, was misspelled by a lot of people. There's like 5 or 6 different variations that people write in that attribute, and actually quite high numbers as well. But so class names that people commonly use are like header, footer, section, and aside to group various structured things on their page. So it sort of made sense to give elements to these elements so people could just use the elements and you don't have to figure out which div is closing which div earlier on in the page, and it would make more sense. We also wanted to make things simpler. This is a nice example. As you can see, the first doc type is what you might use now for HTML documents, or you might write HTML4 or 1 there. As you can see, it's really long. It doesn't fit on the screen. You probably use copy and paste. You can't remember it. And the thing is, browser vendors don't do anything with most of the information in there. In fact, all that's needed in browser vendors is the lower one. And this is because the only reason doc types matter is to trigger a certain rendering mode. And there are 3 rendering modes called standards mode, almost standards mode, and QRIX mode. Basically, no doc type triggers QRIX mode, and having a reasonable doc type triggers standards mode. And below is the shortest string that triggers standards mode in all relevant browsers, including IE6. So we thought it might just be useful to actually just specify this as the doc type so people can remember the doc type, don't have to copy and paste anymore, and do various things, and make it more clear that the doc type is completely meaningless and only there to trigger standards mode. A similar thing we could do for character encoding. in the olden days, user agents didn't, when checking character encoding, they just scanned the document for the first string that says char set, and then interpreted the following bit as, they didn't actually read the entire element, and all other user agents had to reverse engineer this practice because, well, otherwise they couldn't render documents correctly. So nowadays, we could just shorten this thing to meta char set is UTF-8, so you just have to scan for the first meta element with char set. And in the meantime, it makes things a lot simpler for authors who don't have to remember the first thing and can just use the simple thing that already works. We made the type attribute optional, but you can still set the type attribute, and in case you set it to an unrecognized type, user agents will not apply the style sheets or will not apply the script. But when you omit it, they already apply the styles. It's just non-conforming in HTML4 for no obvious reason, really. So we decided to make it optional. So you can now write this. So to get on with some of the new features, Canvas is one of the additions we added, and it has got quite a high adoption rate already, apart from Internet Explorer, although there have been JavaScript libraries written for Internet Explorer that make most of the functionality work. Canvas is basically, it's like the image element, except that it's scripted. If you're familiar with Java, it gives you basically access to a 2D graphics API. And so you can script graphics on the client. So you might imagine that the server sends you a bunch of data, and then the user will manipulate some of this data on the client in like a table. And then using JavaScript and the Canvas element, you can generate graphs based on that data. Or you can create little video games and things like that. So here's a simple thing on how this works. Above you have the Canvas element, and then there's a little piece of JavaScript there. So the first line of the script, which has get element by ID demo, will get a reference to the element. And then on that element, we try to get a drawing context. In this case, we get a 2D drawing context. There have been extensions for this for 3D and stuff, but they're not really finished yet. Anyway, in this case, we get a 2D drawing context. Then we set a fill style on it, in this case to light green. And then we fill a little rectangle, and the result is that you get a little green rectangle on your screen. It's not very exciting, but you can see what you can do with this. I made a 15-line application that basically listens to some mouse events, and then you can do things like this. Basically, it just listens to some mouse events and then calls line 2 with the given coordinates. And so you can create simple, well, fields where people can write things. And in fact, the domain register I use in the Netherlands uses this kind of thing, so I can set an autograph online, which they then use to fax a domain registration template to SEDN, which is the domain register company we use in the Netherlands, which still require silly faxes and stuff. But now I no longer have to send the fax myself because my domain register will do it for me automatically based on, well, some things like this. Another problem we try to tackle is video. Currently, embedding video requires quite a bunch of effort. You have to embed it in Flash, use a bunch of object parameters, then try to get object to work in the other browsers, and then maybe fall back to embed and such. It would be nice if you were able to do it simpler. There are two main issues with video. One is simple and one is hard. The syntax issue is relatively simple, but getting a codec that is well, both an open standard and royalty-free is proven to be difficult, and we're not quite there yet. But so for syntax, you could think of something like this. You basically have a video element, and inside the video element, you have some content for user agents that don't support the video element at all. Basically, you point to a clip, which can be played, and you set the controls attribute if you want the user agent to provide controls. If you want to script controls yourself, like you want to create your own UI for things, you can do that through scripting. There's quite an elaborate API that allows you to seek, stop, play, find out how much information has already been downloaded, and things like that. So for the format, we're not quite sure. Firefox will be shipping with Octiora. Opera has been pushing for Octiora, but well, Apple and Microsoft are not too happy about it. They basically don't want to increase the risk they take by including such a format. So yeah, I don't really know yet what will happen there. There is a solution though to include multiple streams, which I'll get to soon. So here's a little video embedded in the page. Let's see if it works. Maybe I should refresh. I guess it takes about 3 minutes. I guess we can maybe take a small break for me and you can watch it. I'll take a sip. It's not a very fast video, but it's fun. This is sort of where we want to go with the video element. This again has like the controls attribute specified, so that people can just embed a little video on Wikipedia, for instance. I can try to show that this works in Firefox. Let's see. Last time I checked, it works. Yeah. So as you can see, Firefox has a slightly different UI for their controls thing. Is some internal version that they might have done things differently by now. I don't know. And here's one which is very primitive controls specified. And as you can see, zooming and such works also quite nice. It's not, yeah, it's quite easy. And if you pause here, the person has implemented a little overlay, which you can simply do with some HTML. So if you want to distribute several equivalent streams, because currently user agents don't support, so some user agents might support Octiora and other ones might support MPEG-4, you could do something like this. And basically, we have a source element, which is allowed as a descendant of the video element. And you basically point to the given video files, and the user agent will try them in order. And the first one that works will be used. So to get back, in the beginning of the presentation, I demonstrated a little new form control. There's a bunch of other extensions, such as here's the way to do combo boxes. There's a small bug in Opera which makes the choices appear really small, but basically it allows you to like select certain predefined values while also allowing free-form input. And currently there's no way that this is possible. So it's quite nice that we finally have this. And the way this is done is basically the input element gains a list attribute which points to a data list element by form of ID ref. And this also, you can also use this for like the date attribute, or for the date input if you have like a bunch of predefined dates. So there's a number of other controls like input type number. I think it allows -2, and there's input type range, where it basically gives you slider controls. I think range might actually work in Safari already as well. So I think that's the only one they implemented so far. And there's a bunch of other extensions as well, such as the pattern attribute, which basically allows you to specify a regular expression. You can specify constraints for the slider and number controls by saying what the minimum value, the maximum value is, and they can take steps. Like if you have a step for the range, it will not allow the user to select 14 in this case. You can make an input control required, and there's also a way for the user to allow selecting multiple files, which is great. I think currently all the sites that need this need to have some kind of flash workaround, which seems like quite a bit of overhead for something the user agent could simply do instead. And you have to realize that these constraints are basically, they're validated by the user agent on when the user tries to submit the form. So basically the user agent will then flag like this input control is required and you haven't specified a value yet. So it saves you of writing a bunch of JavaScript on the client side. Of course, you still need to do validation on the server side, because the user could like generate a HTTP request or try to spoof you in some other way. Or it might be using a legacy user agent. So for web applications, we have a bunch of other features. This file basically allows you to say which files are needed for this application. So which graphics do we need, which help files do need to be fetched, and it's part of the solution to allowing applications to be used offline. So for instance, this was recently announced that Gmail is now working with this, and it basically means that if you lose connection to Gmail because you go on a train and there's no Wi-Fi yet on the train, you can still get your email there, and you don't need to download it locally first or something, but you can just go to gmail.com, and instead of doing the network request, it will give you the one that was cached. In addition to caching things and making it available offline, it will also allow things to go faster, because there's no network request to be done. You can just access it directly from disk. To aid with this, there's a feature, SQL storage. It will likely, some of these features will be split off HTML5 at some point, because they're not really part of the language as such. HTML5 was originally called Web Applications 1.0, and for that name it made sense, but now we're sort of moving things and organizing things slightly different, but it doesn't really matter much with respect to the features. So SQL storage basically gives you a client-side API in JavaScript to a SQL database, and basically allows you to run queries on a full text search, etc. So you can offload a lot of processing that you might normally do on the server to the client, or in the Gmail example, you would have stored the emails locally, so people can search for them there. There's also simpler storage available, which is basically key value-based storage in the form of local storage and session storage. Local storage gives you persistent storage across sessions, so if the user closes down the browser and then starts it up again, the information will still be there, sort of like cookies. And session storage just gives you storage for the duration of the session, and it's also scoped to the window. So if you have two tabs open and you're booking a flight in both, they won't interfere with each other, because session storage is scoped to the window. If the site was using session storage, that is. For networking, we have some cool features. an event stream from the server. It basically does an HTTP request to the server, and which gives data back in a specified format. And each time you get like a little message in JavaScript, and basically allows for implementation like new stickers and such to be made much simpler. Because instead of polling the server each time, the server basically gets to push. If you implement your own protocol, you can even do cross-origin bidirectional communication. So you can basically, you get a persistent connection with the server, but you don't just receive messages, you can send messages to the server as well. So basically implement any kind of thing you want. And this one doesn't work over HTTP, but it's just a really lightweight protocol. You have some kind of handshake that the user agent and server to initiate the connection. And after that, you just send strings over the wire. And you might add extensions in due course, so you can just send byte strings and such. Byte arrays. There's also a way to do cross-document messaging. Currently, if you want to communicate with an iframe that embeds some kind of external document like an advertisement or some kind of little widget, applications need to invent some kind of hacks. So they change the fragment identifier, part of the iframe URL, and then have a script looping every 5 milliseconds or so, or, well, not 5 minutes, maybe 50 or so, on a set interval loop, and basically check if the fragment identifier has changed. And then when the fragment identifier has changed, they can try to communicate a message back, and the other end has sort of the same thing where the thing is looping all the time, using all kinds of resources. And this is pretty cumbersome. So we now have a simpler solution that's deployed in all browsers, I think now. It's called post message. You basically get a reference to the iframe, the iframe's window, invoke post message on it, and that frame will get a message event. And based on that message event, you can send a reply and things like that. And I'm actually, validation? Yeah. So, yeah. By the way, if anything is unclear, just raise your hand. I guess I should have said that at the beginning, but we can do questions afterwards as well. A guy from Finland called Henry Sivonen, for his PhD project, he implemented an HTML5 validator. And he did it based on ReduxNG and custom code. And it basically makes validation a whole lot cooler for web developers, because it validates things like attribute values. It checks that tables are correctly, something you can't express with schemas, for instance, that the table has the correct number of columns in each row, and also based on row and call span attributes. It's now his thing was implemented as a Java implementation and is now being adopted by validator.w3.org, and I think he's currently porting the parser. He wrote an HTML5 parser as part of the project, and he's now porting that to C++ to be used in Firefox. So Firefox will get an HTML5 parser when he's done with that. So, and this was sort of all I had to say about HTML5. If there are not a lot of questions, we can do some CSS3 demos that I stole from Håkon Lee. But we can do questions first, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
All those elements you talked about, date, time, the sliders, all that stuff is stylable. I don't think the word exists.
They're stylable to some extent, just like normal form controls are stylable to some extent. In the future, we want to make form controls completely stylable, but that requires quite a bit of work, because basically they hook into platform APIs to draw most of the things, and making all properties stylable also requires extensions to CSS and such, and we're not quite there yet. So I guess the answer is no, they're not completely stylable, yeah. But they are to some extent, and we'll make it better in the future. Yeah.
My question is about the input element for the file type.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys done any work to enhance the user interface of such elements? or are you guys delegating that for another effort?
So the HTML working group itself doesn't do any work with that. Like the user interface is basically left up to the implementation for those things. I know that various browser vendors, including us, are working on better UI for input type file. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Another question about those WebSockets. You said that it would it's like a pseudo protocol. You can implement whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
That abstracts the entire communication levels. Like it works on proxies, it works on through NAT.
So it cheats a little bit. The way the protocol works is that it tries to go so the part the user agent implements, it looks like an HTTP message. So that's why it can pass through proxies quite easily, and all kinds of legacy stuff. But what it's actually doing is it's building a custom thing, and it's not actually going to communicate through HTTP at all. It's just that the protocol looks a lot like HTTP at the start. But still, on the server, you don't need to have a full HTTP server to communicate back, because the message you get is really specific. So on the server, you just need like 30 lines of Perl or something. Yeah. Or probably less, because Perl allows you to compress and whatever. Okay,
and one final question about post-message. Cross-document communication. Is that asynchronous or synchronous?
The message is asynchronous, basically because...
Specify callback and no?
Yeah. Well, no. What do you mean with callback? You would so you send a message.
Yes.
And if you want to get a reply of some sort, the other window basically sends a message to you.
Oh, okay. You wait for. Okay, yeah. Got it.
So
Thanks.
you have your own message listener. Yeah. But yeah, it's asynchronous to allow. So if you might have seen like new IE8 and Google Chrome have like architectures where the tabs are split, and where they also have separate message loops or basically separate processing contexts for a related set of origins. And that concept might be hard to explain right now, but it effectively means that stuff that runs in a separate origin might not run on the same JavaScript thread anymore. And therefore having it asynchronous is better, because otherwise they would have to do kinds of locking and freeze scripts in frames, and yeah. Any other questions? I'll just go through this CSS3 stuff. That it's kind of cool. So this stuff is made by Håkon William Lee. He's the co-inventor of CSS. And this is some kind of internal Opera build that I'm not sure if I can actually show, but I'll do it anyway. Well, I can show the features. That much I cleared. So text shadow. I guess you might be familiar with this. You can do all kinds of fancy effects. Web fonts. This should work in the next version of Opera 10. Not all of this will work in the next version of Opera, because some of this is quite far internal build. But some of this will. So it should just, I think text shadow might actually already work in Opera 9. I'm not really sure. So you can have all kinds of cool fonts that are available free online, and you can use them on your web page without having to use crazy images for every header, or you use Flash, which will increase your CPU usage a lot and make your site slow and whatever. So it looks quite nice. So now it gets a bit more interesting. So here's using border radius to get like rounded borders and box shadow. Yeah. So here's a simple box. Here's the same box, but then with border radius, and you can do weird things with border radius. And you can mix box shadow and border radius. This is border image. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the feature. It's like browsers are implementing this now, like us. Basically it gives you, if you have an image like this, you split it up by using CSS syntax in 9 different components, and then you put them around. Like, so the top part here is stretched, and the bottom part is stretched, and the side parts are stretched as well, but the corners used from the image. And then here instead of stretching them, it's repeated, and it looks a bit ugly, I think, but it's an ugly image anyway. So. And this is quite a cool demo. So here's a really simple box. Adds a little border, some box shadow, more complicated box shadow. Border radius. So this is the kind of this is just a div, and you can create quite weird effects. Here's another one. We implemented you might have known that Apple is implementing transitions for CSS, and we did the same thing. So here's the Opera logo, created with 2 span elements and a bunch of radius, and we added some animation effect to it as well, using the CSS transition proposal from Apple, which we implemented. And basically on hover, it sort of increases in size, or decreases in size. And here's just a simple demo of the new NTF child selectors. So you can style things based on their position in the DOM. And that was it. Yeah, I can go back if you want. But it's pretty weird, I think. I mean, you are not able to do this with boxes right now. Like,
Will this be on 10?
sorry?
Will this be on you upper 10?
No, this one. So border radius won't make it to upper 10. Likely the one after that. Yeah. So, any questions regarding this? Regarding HTML5, Opera? Was I that good? I don't really believe it. Yeah.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm pretty much done, yeah.
Oh, okay. Round of applause. Well, that was quick.
Yeah.
You still had another 40 minutes, you know.
Well, there was scheduled like 40 minutes for questions, but it seems that people are quite silent.
Yeah, okay.
Regarding the present mess, well, at least for me, because I'm still learning about it, on HTML and XHTML and the serializations. What's the future of HTML5 regarding that point? Will it allow next HTML serialization or not?
So there is an XML serialization of HTML5. Basically, the specification is written as an abstract language based on a tree model. Like this element can be nested inside that one, and it can have this and this attribute. And there are basically three ways to write the language. Well, 2 ways to explicitly write the language in a text document, and the third serialization would be the DOM itself. So yeah, you can write it in XML as long as you use the XHTML namespace. And we call that serialization XHTML5. And you can write it if you want in HTML. And so with XHTML5 you have some of the limitations of XML, and with HTML5 you have some of the limitations of HTML. So yeah, it's definitely it's sort of intrinsic to the whole effort. Yeah.
And as in optional, or as in the current state with XHTML1, which is not advisable to serve as text HTML.
So in terms of media types,
Exactly.
the whole decision is based on the media type. So if you use text/HTML, you will be using HTML always. So regardless of whatever else is in the document, if there is a byte stream with that as media type, it will be interpreted as an HTML document. Well, in some weird circumstances, it might be interpreted as a feed, but I'll try not to go in there right now. So yeah, if you want to use XHTML, you will need to use an XML compatible media type, and then it will be processed as such, and the user agents will do the right thing. Whether or not IE will implement that at some point is, of course, dubious. I mean, we could require it in the spec, but that doesn't mean they will do anything. Like.
So you believe that it is possible that at a certain point everyone is serving XHTML5 as text HTML and everything runs fine?
Well, it kind of depends on what features they would use from XML. Like if they would use namespace prefixes, if they would start embedding other kinds of things and would expect the DOM to be XML-like instead of HTML-like, that wouldn't work. If they stick to sort of the subset of XHTML5, they would be compatible with HTML5 and then also write their scripts in quirky ways, then sure. But there are so many weird things with, I think they're dubbed polyglot documents, that I'm not sure you really want to go in there. Yeah. But I mean, you could. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So, any more questions? I don't know. Still have a lot of time. Want to make some jokes or something? It's better not. Oh, okay.
You didn't mention one thing that I think is important to talk about. The data star attributes, are those in? The ability to add machine information to. Okay, you got it.
Yeah.
What's the status?
So in HTML5, there is a feature. A lot of JavaScript authors want to embed data in pages just associated with elements, and just for JavaScript, like they might have implement some kind of shooter game using div elements, and each div element represents a planet, and they want to store like a population of the planet on the div element in some way, and maybe also the amount of damage the planet has sustained so far in the battle of the game. And currently, people, what they would do is they would invent a bunch of custom attributes that might conflict with future extensions to HTML. So we sort of create a really simple namespace, and it's just for pages that want to use this. You would use data dash and whatever your attribute name, and it would be guaranteed to not interfere with future extensions of HTML. It's also guaranteed that user agents won't process them, and they also pass the validator. So you can just have your own data dash attributes for some kind of local data just for that element. And there's a JavaScript API available to access the attributes as well, which is data set dot whatever the attribute value name is, and then you can set or get the data. And we call it data set and not just data, because there's already a data attribute on some elements, so it would conflict with that.
Would that work for microformats?
So there wouldn't be for microformats, at least not as currently designed, because microformats are intended to be processed by user agents, which is different from the custom data attributes, which are just for scripts. So microformats, I would assume actually that the microformats people seem to constrain what they're doing to what is valid in HTML4 and XHTML1. For instance, there is a time element in HTML5, but they still want to solve their problem they have with times and how they interfere with accessibility clients with what is available in HTML4 and XHTML1. And it seems that they don't want to look ahead quite yet. I'm not sure what the rationale for that is, because I'm not involved with the microformats community. But I'm sure there is one. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Well, I actually have a question, by the way. Concerning security, I know, is there, oh, okay, oh, great.
So this, I'm sorry, you can ask your question
Okay,
after I'm done
I'll
playing.
shoot the question anyway. Concerning security, aren't you concerned, you know, with the WebSockets feature that people might run some code they might not want to, you know, you transfer some binary code through the application and it will just run, you know, most computers are Intel's. You know.
So the thing with WebSockets is that it's not real sockets. So if we would allow real sockets, we'd have a real problem. But the way the feature is designed is that it works well or is secure by nature because it requires a specific handshake and requires a specific thing to be implemented on the server. So you can't just talk to arbitrary mail servers and start spamming the world if some user happens to visit evil.com. That's not possible.
Oh, okay.
So it is a specific handshake that is required between the user agent and the server in order for the whole thing to start. So you won't get that problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So regarding this game, someone implemented this. I'm not sure I'm supposed to be showing this since we ship on the Wii and such, and I guess Nintendo doesn't really like web-based games. But it's a fun game. The same guy implemented like Mario Kart and such, and like the basic Nintendo versions. I'm not sure. I can't go into pipes, I guess. No.
I hope you don't get fired.
So this is one of the things implemented with Canvas, and yeah. And other people did Bomberman, and various other space shooter games, and all the cool stuff.
I just hope you don't get fired for this, but okay. Anything else to show?
Sorry?
Do you have anything else to show? You know, we still have a lot of time, so.
I can show. So when CERN, so this is from the same guy that did the JavaScript thing. When CERN announced their Large Hadron Collider, which actually failed the first time, but he made this little game, and you basically have to guide this electron and try not to. Well, so this is what happens when you collide. It's really an impossible game since I found out no way to actually find out when there will be a collision. It's just, I think, after some period of time. I don't think I have any other games that I just have stored locally, so I need to would get network access or something. But I don't think I have. You could just all get beer or something. I don't know.
Well, then I guess we can wrap it up. So
yeah, sure. Yeah, if there's no one with questions, then
okay.
Sure.
No more questions? Oh, well, then a round of applause for Andrew and Kesteren. Thank you for coming. So now we're going to give away some stuff. That's what you've been waiting for, I guess.
Should I disconnect or?
No, it's okay. Oh, right. When you
need it?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, yeah. Well, wind okay, right? Doesn't really matter.
Or something for showing so much.
No, I show this all the time, actually.
This is in Canvas. You can get it from this is in Canvas.
Sim, sim. ditch if you want to start a campaign for your website, I guess. Well, so we're going to raffle this first. Oh. Just a second, so we can... Não se importem. Ele percebe. Ok, o primeiro Google AdWords vai para 1247. Onde é que ele está? Não está? Ah, está aqui. Espera, aguardem só aqui ao pé, ok? Próximo. 1200. 1200. Está aqui? Ah, está ali. Ok. Próximo. 1135. Ora, lá está. Feliz contemplado. Mais. 1225. Onde está? Onde está? Ah, está ali. Agora só um bocadinho. Próximo. 1144. Ok, está ali. 1146. Quem é que tem o 1146? Oi, grande confusão que acaba ali. Ah, este. 1146? És tu? Ah, ok. Correto. Olá, estás bom. 1254. Ah, lá está. Aquela rapariga ali? É, não é? É, és bom. Próximo. 1133. Ah, já agora, se repetido alguma coisa, não levam 2. Isto é o random.org. Quantos é que estão aí já? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ok, falta um. Está-se bem. 1232. Lá está. E agora? Quem é que vai ganhar a Wii? O Sports Pack. É o que há também. A força? E é o 1248. Onde é que está o 1248? Está ali. Ok. Muito obrigado, muitos parabéns. Uma salva de palmas aqui para os nossos vencedores.